So this is lesson 4-2, writing equations. So no longer are we going to be writing equations in slope-intercept form. We now have a new form that we're going to be writing equations in, and this is called point-slope form. Well, what's nice about this is I can actually pull apart the problem or the word, and I want you to note that we are going to have a point, x comma y, and we are going to be getting or being given the slope. So this form has both a point of x1, y1, and the slope, and you need to remember that my slope is m. Okay, so we are going to be writing equations both in point-slope form, and from point-slope form you're going to be able to go from point-slope to equation of a line, which is y is equal to mx plus b. And we're going to utilize some skills that we already know. We're going to be utilizing skills such as distribution, and we're going to be using our skills of solving an equation, because that's what we're going to be using in order to get it into our new y is equal to mx plus b. So that's where we're going with all of this. But let's take a look at our three learning objectives. We're going to write an equation of a line given its slope and a point on the line. We are going to be able to write an equation of a line given 2 points on a line. And then obviously we're going to be looking at solving real life problems. So in this video I'm going to take us through the first couple examples, and I'm going to stop, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish up during your algebra class on Friday. So it's really important for you to get through all of this material in today in order for you to be prepared for tomorrow. So let's take a look at some important information. So again, we're going to be looking at point-slope form. And point-slope form relates to the information below. So here's my information. Here is the point-slope form. So I'm going to write point-slope form. And here it is right here. It's y minus y1 is equal to m parentheses x minus x1. You know that m is the slope. I need you to reference that. What else do I know? I know that y1 and x1, these are points. So I'm going to write x1 comma y1. And I want you to remember that this y, in fact I'll do it in pink, this y and this x are the things that stay constant in the y is equal to mx plus b. So this x and this y are these. And we're going to label a point with x1, y1, just like we do when we calculate the slope of a line. Okay, so let's take a look at this example. This example is written in point-slope form. How do I know that it is? Because it is in this format of y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. It's in this format. So what is my slope? So right here, my m is equal to 2. Where did I get that 2? Got it right here, because here's my m. So right here is my slope. So now I'm going to underline -5 and -1. Okay, so actually draw a box. because I've already got subtraction, 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 subtraction. So my points are simply, remember this is y1, got 5. Here's my 1 right there. So these are my points. 1, 5, and again right underneath there I'm going to label it as x1 and y1. So 1, 5 come from this equation. M comes from this equation too. It's my slope. Alright, so now if you're given a point on the line, so what I want you to do is underline this and draw it. If I'm given a point on the line, meaning if I'm given x1, y1, and the slope of the line, remember the slope of the line is my m. I can find m by my graph, by counting, or by finding y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, so remember that. So if you are given a point on the line, x1, y1, and the slope of the line, meaning I'm giving it either as m, I have to calculate it using a graph, or I have to calculate it using my slope formula, you can write an equation of the line. So what is the equation of the line again? The equation of the line is y is equal to mx plus b. And we know from y is equal to mx plus b that my m is the slope and the b is my y-intercept. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the slope formula. We already know. Here's our slope formula. You can write that down, slope formula. And you're going to substitute the slope and the point given to find the equation in point slope form. So let's rewrite. Here's my point slope form again. So I'm going to write point slope. And what is it? I'm going to go y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. And again, please remember, x1 and y1 are my point right here. My m is my slope, and I could calculate that by using a graph or using my slope formula of y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Alright, so that's a lot of information there. So now let's go ahead and use this information to do our calculating and our finding. Alright, let's turn the page. Now we're going to look at page 14. So we're going to look at example A. Example A says we're going to use slope and a point to write an equation. So let's take a look at what we've got. We're supposed to write an equation. We're supposed to write it in point slope form of the line that passes through a point and has a slope of 1/4. Alright, so what are we given in this problem? You're given a point and you're given the slope. So I'm going to write this as my point is -8, 3, and underneath that point I'm going to label it as x1, y1. What else am I being given in this problem? I'm being given that I have a slope of 1/4. So if I know my slope, I'm going to write m is equal to 1/4. Okay, so now, what else do I know? I'm asked to write it in point slope form. So you may need to go back and reference it, or I'm going to remind you that you really should memorize it, but you will be given this information on your test on purpose. So I will always give you the formulas. So you're going to write y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. So I'm going to take a look, and I'm going to go, what do I know? Here's a y1 right there. That y1 is going to go in right here. I have x1. This x1 is going to go right here. And the last piece, I'm given my m. That's going to go in right here. So let's go ahead and write it. I'm going to write y minus 3 is equal to 1/4 times x minus -8. I'm going to simplify because I can't leave this as minus a -8. So I'm going to write, simplifying this right here, as y minus 3 is equal to 1/4 times x plus 8. Bingo. I've done it. I've done it because I've written an equation in point-slope form. Here is my point-slope form. What do I know from this equation? I know that my slope is 1/4, and my 2 points were 8, 3. Okay, or -8, because remember we do this minus minus. So I need to remember that that means that I've got a -8 because this is a minus, and I go -8, so minus minus makes it plus. So when I write, you see that that's why it's -8. And we were given this information right there. So that's example A. What I'd like you to do right now is I'd like you to go in and do number 1 and number 2. And I'll get you started by telling you you're supposed to write an equation in point-slope form. What that means is you're going to write it as y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. Okay, you're going to do that for both 1 and 2. So you can see I've gone ahead and filled in the 2 practice problems or monitoring progress, and I did them in pink. So you can see the very first thing I did was I labeled x1 and y1 in both practice problem number 1 and 2. That makes it a whole lot easier for me to go in and drop it into my equations. So you'll notice here I've got a minus, and then I inserted a -1, which when I simplified that I got to y plus 1. And all I did was I plugged in x1 right here and my m, and this is my equation in point-slope form. I did the same thing with 2. You'll notice that when I did that I got y minus 0, and I've got -2/3 times the quantity of x minus 4. Therefore, I went in, and you could leave it like this. I don't have a problem with that. Or you could have simplified it down to y is equal to -2/3 times the quantity x minus 4. So that's example A. You're given a slope, and you're given a point, and you write an equation, and you actually left it in point-slope form. Now what we're going to do is we're going to move on, and we're going to look at example B. And example B says we're going to write equations of lines given 2 points. So I want you to notice again in this example that I am actually given some nice pieces of information. It says step 1, find the slope. Well, and then I'm going to use the slope and one of the points to write an equation. Remember here, look at, I'm given a graph. On the graph, I've got 1, 2 and 3, -2. So notice I need to write an equation of the line. Notice I don't have a y-intercept, and I cannot assume that if I just extend this line, what my y-intercept is going to be. I have to be very careful with that. So I'm going to utilize the point slope form. And the reason why is because I can calculate the slope from my graph, and I can use one of these points from my graph. So at the end of the day, it says we need to write it in slope-intercept form. That's what it says. Write an equation in slope-intercept form. So I know that I need to be y is equal to mx plus b. Okay, I know that. Well, noting that my m is slope and my b is my y. So we need to write the equation in y is equal to mx plus b. So what do I need? I need the slope. Okay, I can get the slope from my graph. I need the b. I don't have a b. So this is what I'm going to teach you, is how to get the y-intercept. And so the very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to calculate the slope. I'm going to show it both ways. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and label, x1, y1, x2, y2. Okay. And I'm going to actually come over here and I'm going to write each point. My first point is going to be 1, 2. I'm going to label it x1, y1, and I'm going to show you why I'm doing this. My second point is 3, negative 2. And I'm going to label that one as x2, y2. Okay, so now I need to calculate slope. So again, I'm going to show it both ways. I can use the graph, but I'm actually going to come over here and calculate it. So here's my slope. The slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, so let me grab my y2. My y2 is negative 2. I'm going to grab my minus, and I'm going to get my y1, which is 2, all over x2, which is 3, minus 1. I'm going to continue to simplify, and I get negative 4 over 2. Continue to simplify, which means I get negative 2, and therefore that is my m. Okay, so I calculated slope using the slope formula. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to my graph, and I'm going to show you calculating slope using this. So again, I'm actually going to grab that point right there, and I'm going to note that my line is going down, therefore I have a negative slope. So I'm going to start here, count down 2, which means negative 2, count over 1, which is 1, therefore my slope is negative 2 over 1, which is simply negative 2. So you're going to notice that my two slopes match, negative 2 and negative 2. You can use either one to calculate the slope. Now, again, note, no y-intercept. Take a look. 1, 2, 3, negative 2. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go in and I'm going to use my point slope form. So I'm going to use these 2 points. There's my x1, y1. You're going to remember that the point slope form is as follows. Y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. So now I'm going to go in and I'm going to substitute all the things I know. I know the m, I know my y1, I know my x1. Here we go. Y minus 2 is equal to negative 2 times x minus 1. Okay, so this is point slope. Point slope. What do I need it in? Slope intercept. So I can actually take this and convert it into slope intercept by doing the following. I'm going to distribute, do my rainbow. So I'm going to write y minus 2 is equal to negative 2x. Negative 2 times negative 1 is plus 2. Now, remember what I said at the beginning? I said you're going to use distribution, which is what we just did. And remember what else I said we were going to do? That we were going to solve equations? Well, you did this. Now we're going to solve an equation. I need to get it into y is equal to. That means I need y to be by itself. How do I make y be by itself? By adding 2 to both sides. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides. Draw my line. Negative 2 plus 2 becomes a 0. What am I left with? Y is equal to, bring down the negative 2x because I can't combine it with anything else. And now I'm just going to add 2 and 2 together, which is plus 4. So now you can see how I went from given 2 points on the line, and that is all I was given. I was given a graph with 2 points, and I was able to write an equation in slope-intercept form because I did not have a y-intercept. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you. I'd like you to try 3 on your own if you feel comfortable doing it, and 4 on your own. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually stop and pause the video, and I'm going to do both 3 and 4. And the only thing I'm going to tell you is, notice you were not given a graph. So no graph means I have to calculate slope. So I'm going to give you a couple of things straight up. First of all, we know that we've got to go y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. We also know that I can label my points right here, x1, y1, x2, y2. Okay, notice that. And I also know that in order for me to calculate slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, so now give that a shot. Calculate slope first, then plug it in, back into my point slope, and then from there write it in y is equal to mx plus b. There's a lot of math to do here, so just take it step by step and go slow. So you can see I've done the 2 practice problems. Lots of math involved. I labeled each one of my points as x1, y1, x2, y2. I had given you the slope and the point slope form. Very first thing I needed to do is calculate the slope, which I found out to be 3. Then I took my point slope form and rewrote it, knowing that I used x1, y1 right here. So here's my x1, here's my y1, okay, and then I got y minus 4. Now I needed to distribute. You can see in pink that I had distributed, so I wrote 3x minus 3. I need to solve for y. How did I do that? By adding 4 to both sides. Therefore, I'm left with y is equal to 3x plus 1. For number 4, it was a little bit more work because I had those negatives. So again, I first labeled my points, then I went in and I calculated my slope. You can see I had the negative. I'm very meticulous about writing everything out so I don't make a mistake. And so then I get negative 3 over 12, and notice you have to simplify. So I got negative 1/4. So that I noted was my m. M is equal to negative 1/4. Now what I do is I go back in, and I'm going to use the point slope formula right here. I assigned, here's my x1, y1. I'm going to take each one of these numbers and I'm going to plug it in. Y minus, my y1 was negative 1, is equal to, there's my slope of negative 1/4, times x minus, my x1 was negative 4. So now you're going to see what I did next was I simplified these double negatives. So I turned it into y plus 1, and I wrote x plus 4. Then in green, you could see that I then distributed. So negative 1/4 times x is simply negative 1/4 x. Negative 1/4 times positive 4 is negative 1. So then I have y plus 1 is equal to negative 1/4 x minus 1. I need to solve for y by subtracting 1 from both sides. So I get y is equal to negative 1/4 x, negative 1, and I'm adding more negative, so I get negative 2. So here are my two equations of the line. So you have now just watched two videos of me teaching 4.1 and 4.2. There's about 40 so minutes of video. You now have 50 minutes to go in and do your homework. So my suggestion would be make sure you have all of the problems done from lesson 4-1 and you work through all of these problems. And notice we still have more work to do, but we're going to do example C tomorrow in class. So now is the time to go in, and what do you have for homework? You have lesson 4-1. So I'd like you to do all of this page. There's nothing from 4-2 on here. You also need to make sure that if you didn't get your homework done that's due today, Thursday, you should do that. So be all caught up by Friday. You have plenty of time. And if you get done with your homework, you've done all of the work in here, you can go in and do Delta Math. There's some assignments under slope that I'd like you to do. And I'll see you guys tomorrow on Friday.